Hey, okay, cool. Thank you for joining. This week, I figured I'd give it a shot. I'm going to start doing a podcast read along for each of these entries. So, optimal DraftKings lineup for week 2, a data driven approach. Executive summary, the optimum lineup at a glance. This report provides a comprehensive data driven strategy for constructing high potential daily fantasy football lineup for a DraftKings contest. I focused on DraftKings here because I mainly use that site. If you want to do it for another site, feel free. The methodology synthesizes player specific performance and salary data, market based over under totals from the sports betting industry, and an in depth defensive rankings to identify optimal player selections. The objective is to build a lineup that not only maximizes projected fantasy points, but also strategically allocates strategy to acquire elite talent while leveraging high value, cost effective players. The analysis culminates in a recommended 9-player lineup with a total salary of $49,800, leaving a buffer for minor adjustments. This construction is projected to yield a high floor performance with significant tournament winning upside. The core strategic pillars of this lineup are the targeting of high total game environments, the exploitation of specific defenses, vulnerabilities, and the prioritization of players who offer an exceptional return on investment, or ROI. So, our recommended lineup for this week is Josh Allen. He's going up against the Jets. He's got a salary of $7,100, which, yes, is high. However, the man is producing some points, and he is playing very, very well. My first pick for RB1, Travis Etienne Jr. He's playing for Jacksonville. He's going up against Cincinnati, which hasn't had the best defense in the world. And he's been an effective and integral part of Jacksonville's offense. He's been producing 21 points, fantasy points average. So I think we're going to stick with him. My second choice was James Cook. Now I stack that with Keon Coleman in the wide receiver 1 position. Again, the matchup against the Jets is really, really, really tasty. There's salaries respectively of $6,400 for Cook, and then for Coleman we got $5,100. Coleman does have a little bit of a higher average with 28, but that's to be expected between a running back and a wide receiver 1. I offer this stack. It's actually a 4. It's a 4-position stack. It's really it's a it's kind of a high potential for. I also include Dalton Kincaid here from so you have the reason I'm picking these players and the reason I'm going through with focusing on Buffalo is simply because Josh Allen is playing at a level that I don't think other teams can do. Look back at what he did to Baltimore. Came back after the into the second half. It was 13 points to 40. People were leaving. He put the team on his shoulders, and his teammates benefited. James Cook was keeping the running, which kept the passing open, which keeps the ball going to Coleman and Kincaid. That's just how it goes, or at least that's my thought. Anyways, wide receiver 2, Zay Flowers, playing with Baltimore, and he's going up against the Browns. His salary is $6,200, and he averages 31 points per game. Puka Nacua, a Rams wide receiver. People are saying that he's going to have an off year. I don't think so. I think the Rams have got something going on out there, and I think he's just a really good. He's got a lot of talent, and I think he's going to have a good impact against Tennessee because I don't think Tennessee has anything that can hold him back. So I'm expecting a high floor for Puka. My flex is a little bit different. My system wanted me to put Kean Williams in here, and I didn't want him in there. A, his salary is too high. B, I like Michael Pittman's work in Indiana because I'm also betting on Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones in Indiana, the first game was a coming out party for him because he was able to be effective. The line still needs to bulk to get their shit in gear and to protect Daniel Jones. But if Daniel Jones can get something going against Denver and show Denver and undress Denver, which I think he has the potential for, and Michael Pittman just might benefit from that. Finally, I stack again the Rams defense up with Puka. I think the defense is going to make it very difficult for Tennessee's offense to get anything going. All right, so here's my framework. I focus on the game environments, and you have to have a successful fantasy football draft strategy. It's not just picking high-scoring players. You have to take a look at optimizations, and this requires synthesis of disparate data streams. The following sections detail the analytical framework used to construct recommended lineups, and starting with the micro-level view of a game environments before moving to a micro-level analysis of defensive matchups and player-specific value. So, understanding game environments, we're looking at over-under totals. We're going to have to get a hold of sports betting lines and provide, this gives us a good barometer for which games that are going to have high point potentials. Because if you got a game that's matched up with like two of the best defenses that aren't, with offenses that are not effective, it's going to be a low-scoring game, and you're not going to have a lot of point production. Whereas this week we had Jacksonville and Cincinnati. Everyone's saying they're going to have a lot of scoring in this game, and I think they will. 49 to 50 points, over-unders. Jets, I think, are not going to be able to handle the Bills. The way the Bills took apart the Ravens last week, I think the Jets are sweating bullets. And Eagles and Chiefs, this one is going to be a hell of a game. I think the Eagles are out to prove something again, and I think the Chiefs are desperate to get it in gear. I think Mahomes will have a good week. He's not one of my picks, but I think he will have a good week. Los Angeles Rams and the Tennessee Titans. Here is an interesting one, I think, because I always think traveling teams have a little bit more of a road team has a little bit more of a disadvantage. Of course, everyone knows this isn't new. However, I think if we look at it in the context of a Western-based team traveling east, their players' internal clock is very important, and having to push up your internal clock to where you're playing in the morning according to your body versus playing in when you've been expected to play in the afternoon to evening time, it takes a lot. And I think it's one of those things that may have the Rams a little bit on the weak side, but it's going to come up with how well it's tested against the Tennessee Titans. I think that's going to be a good one. So I'm looking at those games for high production and with good probabilities for over-unders, and that right there. While the high-scoring games are critical, we have to look down at defensive matchups. Now here, a defense may be highly ranked overall, but have a particular weakness against a specific position, which can be exploited by using fantasy players. For example, a defense may be elite at stopping the run but susceptible to deep passes, creating an opportunity for high-end wide receiver. Examination of both season-long weekly defensive rankings provide critical context for this week's matchups. The distinction between these two types of rankings is paramount for a daily fantasy player. A season-long ranking, Bills second-ranked and the Ravens third-ranked, reflects a team's overall talent and projected performance over the course of the season. However, for a single-week contest, the weekly matchup ranking is far more valuable. See, for instance, the Los Angeles Rams defense. Rams are ranked 12th in the season-long projections, which places them in the middle-tier defenses. However, for week 2 specific rankings, they're ranked 3rd, which is an elite play for this week because the Tennessee Titans have been historically and currently rather anemic when it comes to an offensive philosophy. So, Cam Ward is a good quarterback, but he got sacked 6 times. I think the Rams defense is going to feast. So, aside from that one, Jacksonville and Cincy, we're looking at a total over under of 50.5. So, that one I think is a good stacking environment. You can think about it there. But however, I chose to pivot over towards Buffalo, purely because of Josh Allen's dominance. And I'm serious. I know it's a week by week and any given Sunday, but that comeback was impressive. You absolutely saw how gutted the Ravens team was, just that they did not have an answer. And I don't think the Jets have an answer. So I expect Josh to eat. The Rams-Tennessee game, just as I said before, we have a high total over-under. And I think the Rams, with their salary, is a good choice against a weak Titans offense. All right, so we're going to focus on roster construction now. Quarterbacks is what we want to focus on. Of course, I've talked about Josh Allen. I'm not going to go back into it. We already looked at all of his points. We looked at his salary. We looked at his matchup. We think we got a good one on that. However, other quarterbacks such as Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes have high total games. So we're kind of litmus testing back and forth. If you could theoretically probably get away with it, and I know with those numbers you could do it. You could have an alternate Jalen Hurts, Pat Mahomes lineup and still use the remainder of the prior picks. You would still remain under your salary cap because Hurts is 6'8", 6,800. Mahomes is 6,200, and Josh Allen is commanding the highest salary of 7,100. So that's the first cornerstone. The other cornerstone that is very, very important are all the running backs. Now you have to have guys that just have high value, and they're hungry, and they know what they got in front of them. They know the opportunity that's in front of them. And I think Travis Etienne Jr. from Jacksonville, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, don't know, but I do respect him because he does have some talent here. He's got some point production. He's got value because he's only a 5,700 salary. And we're gonna have a strong game with Jacksonville Cincy because that one's looking. The Vegas has got lines on that one bumped up high. James Cook, again, I put this one in because James Cook is an integral part of the Buffalo's offense. James Cook has done an incredible job and benefited from pairing with Josh Allen, because he's just got such great vision of the holes in the way he runs. He's a little hemmed in by the Ravens' defense for a little bit in the game, but I think Cook nonetheless still came out with it and did extremely well. I picked Kyren Williams as an alternate here. In the final report, I pulled this one and used Michael Pittman, basically for all the same reasons I have here for arguing for Kyren Williams. I didn't like his salary. I did not like Kyren Williams' salary. I thought it was too high. So for 13.9 average points per game, the salary 6,300 is wee high for me, but still manageable. Now, the other fun one, wide receivers. Again, you can take a look at stacks, which I did here. Keon Coleman. Coleman is a standout here because he's got a lot of value. 5,100 is very, very low for anybody with an average of 28.2. His salary hasn't bumped up. I'm sure it's going to change later on in the next few weeks. I'm sure they're going to bump it up. But right now, that is a return that you cannot turn down. That's a 5.53 return. Whew, that's a good. And I like Zay Flowers. So let's talk about Baltimore a little bit more. Zay Flowers has got another really, really tasty value play here. With 6,200 and an average point of 31.1 per game. He's playing at a high level. You expect him to have another good high-level production because he's going up against the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Browns, they do have some very good defensive players, but they're the Browns. they got a lot to prove before I think they're going to do anything against the Ravens. So, good luck with that one. And also, they've had a low season-long defensive ranking. Browns have always had a terrible defense. Don't know what's wrong with them. Puka, talked about him a little bit earlier. Puka Nacua is a high-priced anchor for the wide receiver corps. 7,600 is high, but it's justifiable because he's pushing out at least 26 points. And you can take the averages with a grain of salt, but we're going with how these players are working now inside the football, the arena that we're working with. Past performance is no indicator for future performance. However, you can develop probabilities that these players will have good production based on prior matchups, but always update your data and your points and your over-unders before making any real decisions on your selections. So we got tight end flex in defense, special teams. Again, I'm looking at Buffalo and I'm thinking Buffalo's going to feast. Kincaid has been a standout for tight end positions, and I think that he has something there that is very, very valuable because Josh Allen looks for Dalton Kincaid. I watched him against the Ravens. Allen in his reads always had an eye out for Kincaid. Kincaid is a great dump off, especially if defenses try to get frisky and try to get pushed up on the pass rush. I think Kincaid will be effective there. He's also not a bad blocker either. He gets in there and does the hard work. Rams, I think, are going to be the defense of the week. I think that because Tennessee can't get anything going, and they're priced at $3,100. No brainer. Again, my flex, I picked, Kyren Williams was my first pick, but I went with Michael Pittman. I didn't want to let the computer tell me to do everything one way or another. I went with Michael Pittman just because I think Daniel Jones is going to have another good week, and I think Michael Pittman is going to benefit from that because I think Michael Pittman is one of those core players that the Rams are going to have a really good one. Not the Rams, I'm sorry. Pittman's in Indianapolis. So, there we go. Here we go. Here's my justifications. For Josh Allen, leading quarter production. High-value player is Travis Etienne. James Cook is another cornerstone for Josh Allen to work with. Keon Coleman, Zay Flowers, Puka Nacua, Dalton Kincaid, and you can pick around Kyren Williams. You can think about him, or I go with Michael Pittman like I did in the final draft of this. So yeah. All right, alternatives. I always want to have a few alternatives in case you want to have some variation in your tournament lineups or your classic lineups, whatever it is. So I picked my other three, the ones that I was interested in: Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, and of course Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is going to have an interesting year. I just don't think he was in the right system with the Giants. I think the Giants were just in the wrong mindset for Daniel Jones' skill set. I don't think he's walking on water, no, but I think Daniel Jones will have a good experience in Indianapolis. I hope. Indianapolis has also been a place where quarterbacks go to die, but that's anyways. I talked about Etienne, I talked about Cook. Now, Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall is a good, tasty salary there. Wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. I didn't talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., but look at that salary. That salary is right there in line, and I think he's going to be in a good position. All right, perfected performance. I think we're going to have a good week. I think it's going to be a fun week. I think I might play around with a couple of lineups and try to weave in a couple of these other these value player rankings here just to diversify. But all in all, that's it. Thanks for joining. Hope you had fun.